好，各位已經到咗。
All right, members, we have got a quorum. The meeting is now called to order. If members may refer to Annex 2, the papers are listed in the agenda. Today we are to discuss, we will have a briefing by the Secretary for Education on Chief Executive's 2016 Policy Address, paper number CB4 480-1516, Bracket 01. May I welcome Mr. Eddie Ng and his team.
咁喺局長
If members want to raise any questions in respect of today's discussion, you may now raise your hands so that the clerk can record your names. Wong Kwok Heng, Tam Yu Chung, the Vice Chairman, Fernando Chang, Gary Chan, Leung Kwok Hong.
今日好禮貌咗啊，梁國雄啊。好，如果局長準備
Mr. Ng, if you are ready, if your team members are ready, then I'll invite the Secretary for Education to brief us on the initiatives in the policy address that are related to the education portfolio. You may now refer to his speaking notes. Are you ready, Mr. Ng? Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members. The CE 2 days ago published or promulgated his 2016 policy address. Today's paper is to explain to you the new initiatives in respect of education in the short, medium to long term, and also the progress of our implementation of the various initiatives in last year's policy address. I will highlight the major items. Kindergarten education is a very important first step in nurturing our future generations. Starting from the 2017-16, the administration is going to implement its quality-free kindergarten education. This is a new milestone which will replace the present voucher system and will enhance the quality of kindergarten education in all aspects. Apart from today's meeting, we've also arranged another meeting with the education panel to brief you on the details in February. As for school education, we'll establish an 800 million gifted education fund so as to enable Hong Kong to identify students with different potentials and nurture them, and also develop our talent bank. To enhance senior education system, we are going to enhance life planning, education, and guidance service.
We will establish the Senior Secondary Curriculum Support Grant, the Career and Life Planning Grant, and to have surplus teachers to be retained so as to sustain and reinforce the teaching team in the schools. And where necessary, the surplus teachers will be retained for the 2017-2018 school year. And we will have more than 1,000 teaching posts, therefore, retained and created. And also in special education needs students starting from 2016-2017 academic year, we will be optimizing the school-based education psychologist service so that there will be a higher ratio of servicing EPs to students. It will be increased to in the secondary and primary schools 1 to 4. As for One Belt, One Road, we propose, starting from 2016-2017, to establish a One Belt, One Road scholarship. The number of scholars will be increased from 10 recipients to about 100 recipients. And in the tertiary education, we will be increasing the Hong Kong students going to the mainland to study for university scheme, so that we will benefit more Hong Kong students aspiring to study in the mainland. We will continue to strengthen the training and vocational education for teachers, and we will, in this regard, provide to the government in July a report after the research as to how exactly to strengthen this area that is in training. Yes, we have a number of members waiting to ask questions. We will go according to the 4-minute round, including question and answer, starting from Wong Kwok Hing. I have a couple of questions to ask Mr. Ng. First of all, concerning the kindergarten education, for the kindergarten parents, the long whole day kindergarten schools, it is very often the case that parents, because they have to work in the daytime, the children are put into the long whole day kindergartens. I would like to know whether this kindergarten education policy would include these as well. I'm looking at 186 paragraph. It says that there will have to be a means test, and the community care fund will be used to support the program. I do not know whether that is the right way forward. That is the first question. I'm looking at paragraph 195 of the and I'm looking at the MUSS. And this is something that a lot of people are concerned about. That is a mainland university study subsidy scheme. And we know that for some of the associate degrees offered in Hong Kong, there is not very good way out for them, for the graduates. And I would believe going to the mainland universities would indeed be a viable option. But I do not know about the some further details I would like to know about the MUSSS. Thank you for the questions. Chair, concerning the kindergarten education, quality kindergarten education, and in particular the long whole day kindergarten service, we would want to increase that from 7 to 3 to a higher proportion. That is to say, where there is need, we would want to support the number of places in such kindergartens, that's long whole day kindergartens. As for subsidies, if I may just raise an example here, in the past 1 to 2 days, I have been meeting with the industry and the sector, and there is one concern that they expressed, whether there is sufficient resources for this long whole day kindergarten and how it is different from the half day kindergarten. Now, let's say if there are 90 students taken in, according to the voucher system, it would be about $2 million, and with the new policy, it will be 4.9 million Hong Kong dollars. So that would be a very clear case. Now, this is a case that we can mention as to how the subsidies will be increased and used. Now, as for the community care fund, from now to 2017-2018 school year, what do we do in the interim? Well, we will, according to certain indices, we know that each person will be entitled to $3,600 among the target recipients. But this is, of course, within the terms of the Community Care Fund. Now, as for the mainland university study subsidy scheme, there are 78 universities in the mainland which have been marked out to where we support students, Hong Kong students, to study in these schools. And using the SFAA, a 15,000 or 7,500 can be applied for as subsidy to support their studies in the mainland. But the students, while studying, cannot part-time. That is, they cannot take up part-time work there. And we want to extend the subsidy scheme so that we can better support them. Now, whether associate degrees can actually be carried forward to the MUSSS, we shall look into that. Mr. Chair, concerning the One Belt, One Road, there will be a Hong Kong scholarship for Belt and Road students, and there will be more places offered, and it will be about 1 billion in terms of the spending for this scholarship. Now, 1 billion is not a small amount of money. Some say that this is better spent elsewhere. I would like Mr. Ng to explain the background behind that, and is it necessary that we spend 1 billion on this? Thank you for the question, Chair. In fact, this fund is already in existence. It had been operational every year, and in certain areas, well, basically in Korea, Southeast Asia, there are already 10 such offers per year. That's not a lot of countries covered, but given One Belt, One Road initiative, it gives Hong Kong a particular opportunity. And also, Hong Kong as a financial and economic hub, and the force of finance and economy globally is shifting to Asia as well. And for the countries within the One Belt, One Road initiative, we would want to increase our and enhance our relationship with these countries. Now, that is the big backdrop. We would want to, therefore, increase, that is, add 100 additional offers per year from 10 by phases. And Indonesia will be the first such country with which we will sign such an agreement for the acceptance of students. Now, this is a seed fund plus the funds that they have on hand, and basically the returns on investment will be used for the disbursement of the scholarship scheme for Belt and Road Initiative Scholarship Fund. And I would like to emphasize that this is for Hong Kong students, and that is to say Belt and Road students coming to Hong Kong, and not for mainland China students. And another question is whether this will put the Hong Kong students into a place in the sense that it is vying for resources with the Hong Kong students. In fact, there are 1,000 university places for a span of 3 years that are along the different professions and vocational training. And for the students which attain good academic results from the associate degrees, there will be another 1,000 places which can transit into the third year of the university. And also with the increase in scholarships, but basically for Hong Kong students going to the mainland for studies and training, that is already 170 million Hong Kong dollars at least. As for the 10 places from Indonesia, for school fees subsidies, it will be 1.2 million per year. And not only that, that is to say, not only will the government be leading the way, but there will be private sector participation as well. The China Chamber of Commerce is providing with each awardee of the scholarship a $50,000 livelihood subsidy. And that is the main backdrop. We would want there to be more contact with the Belt and Road countries and youngsters. When they come to Hong Kong, they will know Hong Kong much better, and this will facilitate mutual development. Mr. Chair, yes, Mr. Yip. Just now, Mr. Ng mentioned that this is a seed fund. But even so, seed fund, 1 billion is a lot of money. At present, we are talking about a 2.4 billion for the residual fund for versus the 1 billion. And if you're talking about subsidizing students coming to Hong Kong to study, wouldn't the proportion be overly big? That is 1 billion. Wouldn't it be too much? I mean, if we have a lot of extra funds to provide this kind of scholarship, that is fine. But on the other hand, if we are so generous in providing such a big amount, I do not know. It seems that a lot of people are thinking that this is not benefiting the insiders, the Hong Kong people, but outsiders, now, apart from the subsidies.
Well, in fact, there is no subsidy for Hong Kong students. Many Hong Kong students, they are not given suitable subsidies. If we substantially increase our subsidy for foreign students, is there not inappropriate? If you look at the Belt Road measures, many teachers are alarmed. So in the paper it said that to tie in with the Belt Road initiatives, secondary school students are encouraged to study language electives such as Hindi, Urdu, as an elective for senior secondary students. In fact, for the electives for Hong Kong students, the number of electives is smaller and smaller. Now the students are encouraged to study these languages. Are you serious? Mr. Ng, I will speak on the first part, and then Mr. Low will answer the remaining questions. As for the first part, now the Belt Road countries are mainly in Asia, and they are developing very rapidly. Now in the future, there are certain aspects which can help our students. First, the understanding of languages and cultures of the Belt Road countries. Now, with regard to languages, this is a conceptual plan. It is a soft target rather than a hard target, and we will do it when the conditions are ready. We approach it as a kind of cultural and language orientation. So it's not serious. We provide the opportunity to our students. Now, Hong Kong is a world city. Mr. Low will speak on the rest. Thank you. Concerning the scholarships, whether the scholarships are disproportionate. Well, apart from the actual, we need to look at the actual expenses. In 2015, the scholarships given to local students amounted to $170 million. Though we are going to set up a 1 billion fund for Belt Road countries, the money will only be given gradually. It is not to give out 100 scholarships in a year. In the first year, we will just give out 10 scholarships, mainly to students from Indonesia, because we've signed a memorandum. Dr. Fernando Chang. Well, in this policy address, we heard only 3 words, Belt Road Initiatives. We really don't know what Belt Road Initiatives are. This may be the country's strategy. It may be good for foreign trade between China and other countries. It is the strategy of trade development for China. But that is not within the consideration of the people of Hong Kong. Now the issue before us is education. $10 billion will be earmarked for scholarships for the students from the Belt Road countries. That may not be a bad thing in itself. But we should look at the subsidized places for young people of the relevant age group in Hong Kong. 80% of our youngsters of the relevant age group do not have a place in the university. And after the DSE examination, nearly 10,000 students are matriculated, but they are not given any subsidized places in the universities. We prefer to throw money at measures to accommodate to the strategy of our country. That's kind of bootlicking. Why can't we give our resources to our young people so that they can study in the universities? That's a fact. Yes, in the future we need to be international. We need to be pluralistic. This is what an advanced city should do. But the problem is there aren't enough subsidized places for our young people in the universities. But this is not the main point I want to make. The thing I want to say is this. Now, last year, the administration announced that the plan of the lotteries fund, this is a good thing. But we have not seen such a large-scale plan. The 7,000 odd children are waiting for the service. It's really a disaster. Your early identification, early support is really a joke. Now you have put in more efforts. That's a good thing. Now, concerning the kindergartens, emphasis is put on the students that have been assessed. Earlier on, the IED conducted a survey. Half of the children have not been assessed, and they are waiting for service. In the secondary and primary schools, the CCF has agreed to the special ed coordinator and has opened 100 places. And also every year you give 1 additional teacher to 8 NCS students. But the kindergartens are receiving more than 8 SEN or NCS students. But you do not give additional resources. Now, if you look at the report, now for the non-profit kindergartens 1 to 10 and 1 to 8.4. At present, your proposal of 1 to 11 is even worse than the current situation. Will you give an additional teacher to the kindergartens with the Deputy Secretary? With regard to send students in kindergartens, under the lottery fund, there is the outreaching rehabilitation service. Now, we have already started the program. In the kindergartens, there are children who have not been assessed as SENs because they may be just slower in their development. They may not be SENs. But with the enhancement of the skills and understanding of the teachers and the enhancement of communication with parents, the students can be helped to catch up with regard to the outreaching service by the rehabilitation team. We have already enhanced our efforts, and we are going to raise the teacher-student ratio from 1.15 to 1.11. And we also want to step up our efforts in training the teachers and also in their abilities in working with the rehab team. Now, the member quoted some numbers. The numbers are the current situation. Now, different kindergartens have different number of students. That is the territory-wide average. Now, some kindergartens have less students. You can see that the ratio, the teacher-student ratio looks good. In some kindergartens, 1 to 5, 1 to 6. This is not objective. We may not need such a ratio. Next, Mr. Gary Chen. This is the Belt Road policy address. It's shoe shining, it's boot licking, it's just selling Hong Kong down the river. Let us look at the education system, whether we have been betrayed. Now, the policy address is really empty. Now, if you just put up the banner Belt Road initiatives, you show that you are loyal, you are groveling before the authorities. If you just link Belt Road initiative to any project, you'll get more resources. Now, the resources are limited for each bureau or department. You say it is a seed fund. It just use the investment returns, but not the capital. Investment returns, interest is one of the returns. Now we say that is mismatching of education resources. There is a serious shortage of school places in Hong Kong, and then you ask Hong Kong students to study in the mainland. And now you give resources to the Belt Road country students to come to study in Hong Kong. That's the impression you give to the people of Hong Kong. You need to do more studies. How many countries are there in the Belt Road region? What are their names? What are the names of their capitals? And how many countries are there? In fact, Carrie Lam has failed the question. Failed to answer the questions. Now, how many students in Hong Kong are now coming from the Belt Road countries? You even don't know how many Belt Road countries are there. Now, how many students from the Belt Road countries are studying in Hong Kong? You may not have the statistics, but you need to do the comparison. If there are already many such students, you don't need to give more scholarships to them. And also, what are the countries that will be given priority? Now, we call it political mission. We call it brainwashing. That is national policy, and you're going to put it into the curriculum. Say you get it into general studies, Chinese history, and liberal studies. Now, the Great Leap Forward, the policy of the Great Leap Forward will be put into our curriculum. And I don't know how long-standing it will be. It is, in fact, a mutation of nationalist education. Now, can you explain how Belt Road knowledge can be incorporated into curriculum? Is it the publicity about the Silk Road and history, or will that be also exam questions? Will there be exam questions, and all students will answer those questions, and there should also be special tuition courses for that? Mr. Ding, I understand the member's concern is questions. At yesterday's press conference, I stressed that our starting point is the opportunities for our students in future. A lot of information is out there, but it has not been systematically provided or updated. The Belt Road initiatives are a new concept, and there is a lot to learn. We do what will be good for the future of our students. We have a lot of time to arrange our priorities. If the curriculum touches on Asia, say for example Indonesia, we do have some information. Say how many Indonesian students are studying in Hong Kong, how many Hong Kong students are studying in Indonesia. We have the information. Now we do not have enough opportunities, and therefore, having studied the matter, we talk to the universities, and we think that Indonesia should be a good starting point. Hong Kong is an international city. The greater the opportunities for forming networks, the students will have greater opportunities in the future. Our students will have greater opportunities in the future. Leung Kok-hong, Belt Road or Road Belt?
It's up to you, whatever you want to name it. Now, C.Y. Leung, our CE, had used a few thousand words in his policy address to describe One Belt, One Road. Even the country leader Xi doesn't know how exactly to encapsulate it. And we all know that. The Mao Zedong thought, whatever he says, whatever he passes out, people think it's of value. Now, I'm going to give you a very simple question. Now, other people coming to Hong Kong to study for 2 years, and they probably will go back afterwards, and our students, our Hong Kong students going overseas, why aren't they going overseas to study? Now, these 68 countries, when our students, if they go to these 68 countries to study, after the completion of their studies, they come back to Hong Kong. And those students also, after studying in Hong Kong, they go back to their own country. So what is C.Y. Leung thinking about? When the Hong Kong students come back, they will be contributing to our jurisdiction. And for those students, they return to their own countries as well. So why aren't our students going to these countries to study? Why is it the other way round? Answer me that question. Yes, that is indeed an important question. Our Hong Kong students in the past 1 year, we, under our scholarship scheme sponsoring outstanding student, there were 92 students. Well, of the just the 92 students, I want to put this to you, Mr. Ng. How many of them went to these One Belt, One Road countries? They all went to advanced countries, didn't they? Tell me how many went to One Belt, One... Well, give me the number after the meeting. Now, have you yourself been to the One Belt, One Road countries? You go out all the time. You go on business trips all the time. Now, he went to Japan. He didn't come to our TSA meeting. And what about TSA? Will there be a One Belt, One Road question in TSA? I'm sure the students will flunk that one. Now, Mr. Ng, I'm asking you, the Silk Road, how many countries laid on the Silk Road back in the Tang Dynasty? Now, do you want him to answer your question or not? No. The journalists will ask him the questions. You do not even know, Mr. Ng, the Silk Road back then in the history of China. So what are you talking about? Now you're saying you sponsor overseas students from these One Belt, One Road countries to Hong Kong to speak and use $1 billion to do that. Well, you keep asking the question. Are you allowing time for him to answer your questions? Do you want him to answer your questions at all? Well, students have been utilizing the various funds and subsidy schemes and scholarships to study overseas. And there was a very good question asked from Mr. Leung, and that is, what after? Now, for these Indonesian students, these 10 students, after the completion of their studies, even if they go back, there will be a network. There will be a Hong Kong ambassador system, and they will become contacts of ours. They can start their network back home, and in their further studies, research, and work, there will be relations coming back to Hong Kong. All right. Leung Yu Chung next. Leung Kwok Hong, would you please wait for your next round and stop talking? Yes, there's a tertiary student who has the following to say. The associate positions have been increased. However, the government subsidy is not sufficient to satisfy the student's needs. The household income for the student had been more or less the same as last year, but he has failed again to apply for the subsidy, and he has therefore gone for a part-time course instead of attending a full-time course, because in the daytime he had to work to support himself. His salary was $9,000, and he's left with $4,000 after school fees, and he gives $2,000 to the family, leaving $2,000 for himself for everyday livelihood. And he had to do homework, and he had group projects as well with fellow students, but he couldn't do that because he had to go to work. What do you feel? How do you feel after listening to this? And this is not a singular incident. There are these students who are not able to successfully apply for subsidies or scholarships, and they have to work in order to partly support their family and also to pay school fees as well as to sustain themselves. And now to hear you say that you're going to spend 1 billion Hong Kong dollars to sponsor overseas students to come to Hong Kong to study, I would like to know what you feel in your heart, Mr. Ng. Mr. Chair, in subsidizing the universities, it is over 19 billion every year, and it is 46% chance in getting the into university. Plus the other tertiary institutions, it is some 70%. As for the associate degree, as I've mentioned, we will enhance it in the sense that for academically good attainers, there will be 5,000 places offered to them for going into third-year university, and that's been being offered, and these students can also apply for loans and other subsidies. Mr. Chair, I do not want to stop Mr. Ng in his tracks, but I think this is rubbish. All that you mentioned, do you think it will help the case such as the one I mentioned just now? If it were able to help him, he would not have to work in the daytime to support himself and his school fees. He had to turn away from full day course and go part-time. And that is true for a lot of students in the tertiary education institutions. They have to work part-time. How much can the subsidies help? And we all know for the tertiary education students, graduates, and the university graduates, you know what they have to do? They have to repay the government because of their subsidies, or they have to repay their student loans. And you say you are the head for education? Well, we support the students in terms of their pursuit of studies. Leung Kwan-yin. Mr. Chair, the Belt and Road Initiative is a long-ranging initiative. A lot of people in Hong Kong do not understand this. And of course, this will have to be done a step at a time for the services industry, for the financial industry. It will definitely be beneficial to Hong Kong. Now, in the policy addressed by the CE for the young people, because we need long-ranging plans, we have to nurture them appropriately. And we have this fund established in Hong Kong for Hong Kong students to go on exchange student programs, etc., with the 66 countries, let's say for half-year exchange, etc. So for these 66 countries in One Belt, One Road initiative, these students or youngsters will be able to see them firsthand and also to experience their culture and also the education system, etc. And of course, we will need a coordinating committee to coordinate all these initiatives. Now, what you have done, because you have an agreement with Indonesia for 10 students, exchange students, then you name it as a One Belt, One Road initiative in terms of exchange students. And it's catching a lot of criticisms, saying that you benefit the outsiders and not the Hong Kong people. So I will cut myself short. My suggestion is, can you perhaps do a both-way, a two-way scholarship, that is Hong Kong students can also make use of this fund and become exchange students to overseas universities, and the beneficiaries will be great in number. And also for this exchange student scheme, perhaps each side or the overseas countries can shoulder their own expenses. It's just that Hong Kong will perhaps subsidize the transport, the traveling expense. Perhaps you can go back and think about that. The fund itself is set, but the criteria and the way you operate it is flexible. Perhaps you can think of this two-way exchange, allowing Hong Kong students to go out as well. Mr. Ng? Mr. Chair, the suggestion is very good. Under QEF, that is a Quality Education Fund, there will be a special item established to encourage exchange student activities, and that is to support exactly such exchange programs. Mr. Chair, for Quality Education Fund, that is for the high achievers to go to the best universities around the world to study. I do not rule out the possibility that there are excellent universities along the One Belt, One Road region, but this is, and students may want to go there, but this is One Belt, One Road, and this fund should be specific for it. And yes, that is to say, do not rename another initiative for One Belt, One Road. Do you get his suggestion? Yes, we will consider that. We will go back and consider that. So, Wu Chi-wai? I think there is a consensus in Hong Kong that students should have a worldview, but we allow two types of people to have that worldview. One, the high attainers, so these are the quality students who will be subsidized for overseas studies. And now there is this One Belt and One Road initiative allowing overseas students to come to Hong Kong. Now, concerning worldview or global view, the strategic thinking is to have Hong Kong students to allow Hong Kong students to have experience in overseas countries. When I look at our subsidies and funding, it is usually to support Hong Kong students studying in Hong Kong, whether it is school fee subsidies or livelihood subsidies. It is all funding for local education. But we do want our students to have a worldview. We do not want it to be so limited. And another point, Mr. Ng said that exchange is to have the worldview. Is overseas exchange a worldview? To spend half a year in an overseas country, does it mean that you will know comprehensively everything about the culture and social systems of another country? I myself think that this is completely insufficient. For the soft power building of China and sending students to these countries to which China is extending its soft power, I think we really need to give the students the true understanding of these places. So, Mr. Ng, first of all, for these funding schemes for local studies, can you think of perhaps consider extending the schools to overseas? For example, if you can have a list of accredited overseas institutions and the students can apply to the fund to go to these institutions. And secondly, do not limit it to high attainers students, but to extend it to all students. And further,
even if the Belt Road arrangement is for expanding the horizon of students, it should be a two-way arrangement, as suggested by Mr. Andrew Leung. We should send our students overseas to widen their horizons. The Belt Road scholarship will just be window dressing if it is just for foreign students, and it will not achieve cultural exchange objectives. I've already said that we have the Hong Kong Excellence Scholarship. For gifted students, they don't need your scholarship. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, it's not for you to answer the question. You try to get the floor all the time. Well, this is government scholarship. There are also scholarships by universities, and there are thousands of students who have been subsidized to study overseas. There is also the ISEC. Every year, about 300 students are coming and going, and they spend 3 to 6 months. And after they've come back, they have become very successful after graduation. There are different forms of exchanges going on. Mr. Ma Fung Kwok. Paragraph 18 to 20 say that the government will advance the review of the MUSSS. In 2015, 2015-16, just 336 applications. Now you want to encourage more Hong Kong students to study in the mainland. Is it your objective? Or you just provide subsidy to students who have successfully obtained a place in the mainland universities before you provide a subsidy? Now, when they study in the mainland, it will go a long way to enhance young people, Hong Kong's young people's understanding of the mainland. That should be encouraged. The government should be more active in encouraging that. Among the 3,000 students, how many go through the process in which there is no examination, in which they don't need any examination, or how many of them are studying university through sitting for exams? Mr. Low, the Deputy Secretary, will answer your question. The purpose of the review is to expand the scope of subsidy. We have received comments on the subsidy scheme. Now, some students had already been studying in the mainland before 2014. They started to study in the mainland universities before the setting up the scheme. They could not enjoy that. The other question is about how many students who enter 84 universities and they did not get the subsidy. Now we are trying to expand the scope to cover these students. There are about 3,000 students who are studying in the 84 universities in the mainland. As for the breakdown, how many got into the university without the mainland, without examination, how many got into the universities in the mainland through the Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan office, and how many got into universities through exams, we are still studying the numbers. There may be other channels, and the scheme will extend to cover that. I'm happy to hear that. Now, the mainland is now reviewing the financing of universities, and they may in the future increase the number of scholarships and grants, whereas at the same time increase the tuition fees. So will the administration consider enhancing the subsidy and expanding the scope of the subsidy? Now you refer to the number of students newly admitted, but in fact, in the mainland, there are more than 10,000 Hong Kong students studying in universities, and they are not limited to the 82 universities. So will you extend your scope to cover that? Mr. Low, first, the amount of subsidy, $15,000 for full rate and $7,500 for half rate for students who are studying in the university in the mainland through the without going through the interview process, paying about say $5,000, similar to that of the mainland students. We will of course consider enhancing the scheme. Ms. Ng Leung Shing, with regard to education in the policy address, education initiatives in the policy address, they are consistent with the overall policy address. It has the macro measures and micro measures, and also it is objective in the number of secondary 1 students has declined, and there will be excessive teachers. But after a few years, there will be changes. These are objective factors, and there should be a better policy to consider continuity. Governance is not just for a year. If you just focus on 1 year, that is not that is irresponsible. I have seen that in terms of education policy, it is very objective. It doesn't deal with just 1 year. There is continuity, and education is not for the not for the short term. I basically agree that there is macro and there is micro aspect. Belt 1 Road is not just limited to a single generation. Now you say it is an X engineering project, it is too far away, but if you don't start, then When will you be able to reach the destination? We need to plan for the future generations and provide opportunities to our future generations. Education is the basis. There are macro and micro aspects in the policy address. I would ask some issues in relation to micro aspects. The teacher-student ratio of 1 to 11 for kindergartens is proposed. Is this definition scientific? Will this be changed within a certain period of time? In paragraph 192, about 130 students will be affected because of cutting of classes. 100 and even a special paragraph is given to 130 students. A lot of importance is attached to them. In 2017-18, will the measure be extended or will there be continuity? So I want to ask some questions in terms of the micro aspect and the objective aspect.
首先講到呢，就係呢個係免費。
There are 2 points. First, the ratio of 1 to 11 for quality kindergarten education. A committee with more than 80 representatives came to the proposal of 1 to 12. And we decided on 1 to 11. This is based on the study of facts. It's a very serious study. We keep reviewing the progress and development of our education system. What about the 130 teachers? Because of the fluctuations in population, we have introduced 3 safeguards. Despite the decline in population by 30%, through redeployment, the decline in teachers is less than 10%. There is stability. Is there anyone who want to ask for the first round? Ip Kok Him, Sit Ho, who else? I'll draw a line there. No one will be allowed to ask the first round. After Ip Kok Him, Sit Ho, and then I have a simple question after her. Ms. Ip Kok Him, I was late. My apologies. I don't know whether the question has been asked. In the policy address, paragraphs 195 to 197 referred 195-97 referred to vocational and tertiary education. Now we have the ITB. We hope that our focus will not just be on financial services. There's a need to improve the skills and technology of our students. So with the development in information, innovation, and technology, more opportunities will be created for our young people. Now, young people focus their attention on places in the universities. Their perspective is rather narrow. They do not have much understanding about vocational and professional education. Is there any effort to step up education and publicity to let more young people know about vocational and professional education? University is not the only way out. In fact, going down the road of skills and professions will provide good careers for young people. Will more information be given in this regard? Now, a site has been earmarked in the urban area to expand the vocational training council. What is the situation so far? Well, I'll answer the first part of the question, and then Mr. Low will speak on the development of VPET. Now, the task force drafted a recommendation or a report, and we have accepted their recommendations lock, stock, and barrel. Now, there are certain measures that can be implemented immediately. Now, the impression of the community is very important. Therefore, we changed the label from vocational education to vocational and professional education, or VPET. We improve the branding and publicity. And we also attract young people, learn and through the learn and earn effort. 5 industries have started that program. And within the QF framework, within the QF, 21 ITECs, 21 industries and 20 ITECs are dealing with that. We will encourage students to participate in international skills competitions so that students can showcase their skills.
副會長再提一提。
司長。
For details, Mr. Low, please. Yes, Mr. Ng had explained the proposal and also how we are going to implement it. Now, at present, society is labeling vocation and professional education or training as a secondary or a second best option. We want to change that kind of perception, and we have come up with VPET. And as mentioned by Mr. Ng, we have to start from the school in many ways. For example, in applied learning courses in the secondary schools, we will be enhancing that, and we will be providing some 70% of subsidy so that more schools can open this kind of courses and offer them. Sid Ho? Now, I'm looking at page 122 of the policy address, and it says that there will be encouragement for the Hong Kong students to learn the languages of the countries lying on One Belt, One Road initiative. And there are many of such countries, and Indonesia is one of them, and there are a lot of Indonesian helpers in Hong Kong as well. I'm all in support of Hong Kong students learning overseas cultures, learning about overseas cultures, and also learning foreign languages. Hong Kong people very often look down on certain racial minorities. But on the other hand, we see, even though that in our ordinance against racial discrimination, despite the ordinance, the racial minorities in Hong Kong find it very difficult to communicate with the Hong Kong government, or even going to the public hospitals in Hong Kong. They're not able to find translators to help them during the consultation. And so there is a lot of opportunities even there, a lot of need. So do not look upon it as a way of extending our powers or the country's powers overseas, etc. So the training in these languages will actually help with local needs. And how do we go about it? For example, the Baptist University has a translation department, and it is partially devoted to the racial minorities languages translation. Perhaps, well, they're using their own resources to do so. Perhaps you can look into that and support that and see how the Hong Kong students or Hong Kong people can learn these racial minorities' languages and provide the translation to these racial minorities. And also it says here that under the Quality Education Fund, there will be some themes established and they will be given priority. What are these themes, please? Mr. Chair, yes, Ms. Ho, that's a very good suggestion. We have been meeting with racial minority representatives in our work leading to this proposal, and indeed they have some ideas concerning the translation as well. Perhaps Ms. Ng would like to follow up on that. Yes, concerning at the secondary school offering language or minority languages at present, there is a fund whereby students and schools can apply to and sit for these foreign languages examinations. And just now, the idea mentioned actually through local exchanges, overseas exchanges, and etc. There can be such opportunities, and we will consider support for learning foreign languages. Mr. Chair, but we need curriculum. We need textbooks. At present, we have nothing, not even on the drawing board, nothing. I would like to know whether you can immediately communicate with the universities to extend such language courses and provide employment opportunities. We need employment opportunities after that for the graduates who are fluent in both languages in the hospitals, in the other institutions, so that they can put their learning to use. Well, any short response, Mr. Ng? Yes, this is a very good suggestion. This is the first time we have that suggestion. I think we need time to look into it and come up with specific suggestion. Para 197, it says that the vocational training VTC will be given an area in the urban area for building of a new academic space. I would like to know about the details, where exactly, etc. And Mr. Low will have all the information. Yes, I would like to know about the space, where it is, the area, when will it start work, completed, etc. Yes, we are speaking with the planning department, the development department, and we are talking to the... No, I would like to know about the space. Where exactly is the spot? Do you have you determined the spot? We have a few spots in mind. We are looking. So you are earmarking a few spots? In that case, you are... No, Mr. Chair, you would understand that we need certain studies in order to identify the final place. And what about the number of students you will be catering to? Well, IV will provision for IV, about 5,000 to 6,000 students will be served. That's what we're talking about in terms of scale. All right. Next round, Wang Kwok-hing, Vice Chair, Chan Chiu-hong, Leung Yu-chung, Wu Chi-wai, anybody else for the second round? Now, we have but 10 minutes or slightly over. Now, starting with Leung Kwok-hing, 2 minutes each. Question and answer included. Mr. Chair, concerning students applying for tertiary education locally, they had to forfeit their application fee. For the less well-off families and students, this is a very grave burden, and it is also unjust. At the LegCo, I have already made a verbal inquiry about that, and the secretary had said that the government will follow up with the universities. However, this is not mentioned in the policy address. There is no response to this question. But since it is said that the government is very concerned about the students, now for the students who want to carry on their studies but are in an underprivileged position, what is a response to them? Well, I've written to the universities and they all say that they will not refund the fees. What then? Mr. Low, thank you for the question. We are not going to discuss individual cases. We are following up with the universities, but systemically we are talking to the privately funded tertiary institutions. We want them to be more transparent and more standardized in terms of their application fee and their space retention fees. And after that discussion, we will be coming back to you for reports about their progress. Mr. Chair, I would want to see a written response to that after the discussions. Yes. 2 minutes up, Vice Chairman. We have to end at 10. We will see whether we have time, Mr. Johnny Cheung. Mr. Yip? Yes, Mr. Chair, we were talking about One Belt, One Road initiative. I think we have to consider the non-Chinese speaking students locally in Hong Kong. They should be given priority. But of course, Hong Kong students, if they're interested, of course they can learn foreign languages, but a lot of non-Chinese speaking students in Hong Kong, they already know their own language. They may also know Chinese and English. They can make a lot of contributions. So we should look deeper into this issue. And my question is on kindergarten. Yes, members have received a non-profit making pre-kindergarten education association, and they have a certain views, and they're saying that the kindergartens, especially smaller scale ones, they're meeting with very difficult situations, and this is very important because for a number of districts in Hong Kong, the kindergartens are very small in scale. As for the whole day or long whole day and half day calculations, there is another issue. The number of hours is 1 to 2 to 3.8 times, but the pay is not in keeping with that proportion. So the quality can only be upheld through the paying of school fees or raising of school fees. And another way is to freeze the school fee but lower the standard of service. So what is Mr. Ng's response to this? Now, 2 minutes for question and answer. It's already exceeded 2 minutes, your question. Well, perhaps a quick response. Ms. Lam. For small-scale kindergarten, of course, we want the kindergartens to accept new students, but because of certain situations in certain districts, it may not be able for them to take in new students. So we will be looking at individual cases as they come along. Dr. Cheung, Mr. Chair, concerning pre-kindergarten education, for the children where they have special education needs, we have to support them early on. I see that the policy address provides certain improvements in this regard. But for inclusive learning, inclusive education, for primary and secondary education, there is a policy. However, for kindergarten, because we have 15 years of free education, inclusive education, does it extend to kindergarten? If so, how does this policy actually provide support. If you look saying that the lottery fund would be the answer, then I do not see a comprehensive and continual practice in this regard. Yes, a community care fund is providing a SENCO, that is a coordinator for SEN in 100 students. But what about kindergartens? In fact, the non-profit kindergartens are already better than 1:11 ratio. You need personnel to handle this area of work. Mrs. Wong. Yes, Mrs. Wong, please. For SEN students in kindergartens, for these students, after assessment, where they are serious in condition, they will go to special childcare centers to carry on their studies. As for the non-serious cases, no, Mrs. Wong, I'm not talking about special child care centers. I'm talking about inclusive education, the ordinary situation. And for the ordinary schools, there are two models of support. One, the newly established rehabilitation team, and second, for where there are no assessed cases, the teachers will be enhanced with their training. And also, within the school, through everyday learning and communication with the parents, we will also enhance that.
Yu Chung, our panel visited Switzerland and Germany. The secretary was also with us. The two countries provided free university education to the students. Now you spend $1 billion to subsidize foreign students to study in Hong Kong. I asked you for your feeling, but you didn't say anything on this. I don't expect you can do it at one go, but can you do it step by step? First, if the students receive loans, the loans will be interest-free. Number two, you freeze the tuition fees of the universities. And then number three, you provide free university education to the students. The majority of the students have to take part-time jobs to pay for tuition fees. Some even have to support their family. So will you do that? The member has asked many questions with a view to help students. Now, in fact, we are doing this, and that is free interest loans. Some of the loans are interest-free. As for other things, we'll try how we can help. I hope that it can be comprehensively interest-free for all students. Will you freeze tuition fee increases? It is a pressure. Will you work towards the direction? Do you recognize that university should be free? Different economies have different approaches. The direction is how we can help the students where resources permit. Well, then you have spoken nothing at all. Can you confirm what I've said? We are working towards helping students as the ways and means and availability resources. They are some of our consideration. Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Mr. Chairman, my question is whether the Secretary will consider the expanding the subsidy scheme to cover not only local university education, but university education for Hong Kong students studying overseas. So the students who are excellent, they have wide choices, but for marginal students, they can barely support themselves to study in universities, and they can only choose to study in Hong Kong. But you say Hong Kong is an international city. There should be a policy to enable Hong Kong students to study either in Hong Kong universities or overseas universities. So the subsidy scheme will enable Hong Kong students to study either locally or overseas. Will you consider that? I understand the question. Many students, 5 to 7% of secondary graduates go to study overseas, and many European countries provide free university education. Chairman, my question is whether he will expand the subsidy scheme so that local students can choose to study either overseas or locally. Now, for those who are lack of means, you just limit their choice if subsidy is not enough. Well, I understand the question, but we have to consider our resources. My question will not change your resources. If students are supported to study overseas, I cannot see how that can be done if there aren't additional resources. Now you say you will try your best to assist local students to study in universities. Now we have overrun, and 2 members are waiting in the line. Will you try to answer the questions? Tommy Chang and Dennis Kwok, 3 minutes, questions and answers each. Or rather, 3 minutes each, questions and answers together. Tommy Chang, I have a simple question. I will settle the account with him later. Concerning kindergarten education, I do not support your proposal. That is retrogression. Your way of subsidizing kindergarten is just like turning the primary and secondary schools into subsidized schools. In the past, only 10% of the parents cannot have the vouchers, and now 20% of the parents will not get the subsidy. I have nothing against you. Is Arthur Lee's question. Why do we support those who are profit-making? But this is subsidized by the government, and the company is a profit-making company, and you give me the benefit. But for private sector kindergartens, you don't give any subsidy. I don't argue with you, though I don't agree with you. With regard to the voucher system, for a kindergarten education voucher system, you adopt a different criteria. You adopt different criteria for the teachers receiving further training vis-a-vis those who are working in the non-subsidized kindergartens. You have put a wedge between those teaching in the subsidized kindergartens and the non-subsidized kindergartens. And I don't want you to put a wedge between the parents who have students studying in the subsidized kindergartens and the non-subsidized kindergartens. So in the future, will you say try to seriously consider not to cast a division and give 2 different kinds of treatments to 2 different groups of teachers? All the kindergarten teachers should be given an opportunity to enhance their capabilities through more training. The Secretary. Mr. Chang has made a good point. Our policy objective is to enhance the professionalism of the kindergarten teachers. We'll study of you. Mr. Dennis Kwok. Chairman, my question is in respect of the SENs. First, teacher training. The training is not deep enough. You ask the teachers to take a 1-week course, and then you say the teacher knows how to teach SENs. That's really not the case. I hope that there can be teachers who are trained to teach SENs. They should be given professional recognition. And in future, when they teach, they will pay special attention to SENs. At present, there is no such arrangement, and there is no career path for such specialists. Say, if the teachers who have gone through SEN education for SENs, and if they are given professional recognition, then I believe more teachers will receive training, professional training in this regard. The lotteries fund arrangement cannot help the middle class families who pay for OT and ST service. They are spending $40,000 to $50,000 per month. Even if you have a family income of $100,000, that will still be a very heavy bill. So is there any way to help the middle-income families who have children with special needs? Mrs. Wong. Concerning the first question, teacher training, Mr. Kwok, I think you refer to the teacher training for primary and secondary school teachers. We are working with the universities with a view to enhancing the effectiveness of the training courses. Some universities have strengthened cooperation with NGOs so that the trainees will have an opportunity to practice what they learned in the real situation. Now the courses have been improving from time to time. As for kindergartens, there is also training for teachers to look after SEN and also NCSs. As for the NCSs, that's for the learning of Chinese. In kindergartens, if there are SENs or if there are students who have been assessed to be SENs, the lotteries fund, or rather the professional team supported by the lottery fund will be sent to the kindergartens. The teams will not just provide rehab service based on the background of the families of the students. They will provide service to the kindergarten at large. The specialist teams also work with the parents to work with the teachers to improve their abilities. All right, meetings are adjourned. Thank you very much.